Lovely. So welcome again to another UK Hypopressives Q&A, and tonight we have Kate Codrington, and Kate is going to talk to us all about Meno-Phobia. So I'm going to let Kate do a little short introduction about herself, and there'll be lots of questions from everybody that's here, hopefully, as we go along. And if there isn't, don't worry, we've got plenty we can talk about, just the two of us. So yeah, but if you do have some questions, don't be shy at coming forward. It's really good to kind of get that conversation going. So I'll hand over to Kate. Yes, welcome.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you for hosting me. It's lovely to be here. Although 8 o'clock, I'm strongly influenced by circadian rhythm, so
You're starting to fall asleep. Yeah.
My brain is softer, so I'm kind of a bit slower and a bit softer and a bit more. So I'm much more hoppier in the morning. Yeah, it made me laugh, the title. I just sort of made it up on the spot. It sounds like a fear of men rather than menopause, but
oh yeah, absolutely, it does now you said it.
But the reason that I like that title, and the reason that I wanted to speak to that, is because a lot of the difficulties that we face with menopause and perimenopause is because of fear about it.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to bring is various. There's 4 broad ways in which the toxicity affects us through those years. So I'd like to kind of bring that more into your awareness, so that you can have maybe helpful reflections or ideas or pointers for your clients, because I imagine you see quite a lot of people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a big demographic of my clientele.
Okay. So a bit about me.
A bit about you first.
Yeah, I've been actually early next week I'll have been a therapist for 30 years, amazingly. Which is enough to raise a child and have a child grow up. So you think I'd know everything by now, but of course I don't. But the further I go on, I feel like the less I know, the less I'm certain of. I'm sure that many of you can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I started out with hands-on stuff, with massage, with manual therapies. I worked as a body psychotherapist for a while, a couple of body psychotherapy trainings, and I then with my own experience of having children, kind of diverted into pregnancy work. So hands-on, working with the belly, and exercise and sort of yoga and movements, postural stuff, that kind of thing. And then that, as I started to notice my menstrual cycle changing, and I started to get curious about what the hell this perimenopause business actually might mean for me, I got more into the womb massage and fertility world and belly massage. So that was working with. I was sort of moving much more towards women's health, but that also included digestive health as well.
Okay.
And a lot of fertility work, which I found very challenging. And also perimenopause stuff, and that led me through into it kind of bringing full circle, as people often find in midlife, sort of threads come back into your work. So I went back into understanding more about the psychological processes of menopause, and that's really what I specialize in now. So don't ask me hormonal questions, because you'll probably know more about it than I will. Yeah. But understanding the potential for personal growth, the potential for self-discovery, and the potential for becoming more whole through menopause is what I'm interested in.
So rather than it being such a terrible experience as to how it's kind of billed, really.
Yeah, and look at the headlines. All the headlines are about I put on 5 stone, and my husband left me and I wanted to kill myself.
Yeah.
Even fascinatingly, even when the story is positive.
Oh no.
Anyway, so there's a lot to sort of combat in the mainstream, and I'm a writer. Haha, I forgot that bit.
Yeah.
I'm a writer. I wrote a book. There we go. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I wrote a book that's been published recently, which is essentially a self-care toolkit for people a friend. It's like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for menopause. It's like a friendly map, psychological map to hold your hand with a lot of really fantastic self-care tools. And it's not prescriptive, but it's more like a sort of pick and mix of all sorts of journaling prompts, and it includes food and all kinds of stuff. And I do lots of other things too. I have a podcast, and I'm an artist, and I do lots of other things as well. So I'm basically short attention span. I do lots of different things. Anyway, so that's me. And the thing that the headlines don't tell us about menopause is that it's a time of sensitivity. So because the hormonal picture changes, we just become more sensitive. So, and how that shows up is, of course, individual. So people talk about noise sensitivity. I have a client who the sound of a door slamming sends her beyond reason. She feels it as a physical assault.
Yeah.
It often shows up as food intolerances that weren't there before. And most importantly, we're more susceptible to stress.
Yeah.
And paradoxically, more likely to be stressed at this time of our lives as well. Coming if perimenopause, just, I'm sure you know this, but just to clearly define what we're talking about, perimenopause means around menopause. So there might be changes in late 30s in a typical person. Of course, menopause can happen at many different ages. It can happen very young, or as far as 60 or 65.
Yeah.
Menopause means after the periods have stopped for a year or so. And then you're postmenopausal. So to talk about menopause is actually not very helpful, but I use that a lot. but it's actually, yeah. So
menopause itself is just really, really short, isn't it? It's just
it's a moment.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, there's that year.
Yeah, it's gone. And now you're through it. And that's what amazed me as well, was kind of like, oh, that's 12 months and I'm done.
Yeah.
But that's the bit, isn't it? You're not done. And it's actually, I found myself, any symptoms or the way everything that sort of seemed to change a couple of months after that 12 months was up. So for me, it was very much like going through it. I didn't really notice any changes too much.
Yeah.
But it was out the other side that everything's kind of like really changed. Excellent.
We have a musical accompaniment.
There's kids in the background singing. Brilliant.
Fabulous.
That's fine.
I was talking to somebody today who was saying that for the 7 years after that final period, there will be fluctuations.
Okay.
Possibly, around 7 years.
Wow. I've got a way to go then.
Well, and that brings up the question, so what is normal?
Well, yeah,
there's so much variation. So another thing I would definitely, I very rarely make a definite rule about anything, but this definite rule is there is no normal.
Yeah, no.
There's no normal. Some people have no symptoms. Some people have have everything.
Yeah.
Some people have it short time, long time. That, you know, there is no normal. So when people come, typically they worry: am I normal? Is this okay? Am I falling apart? And a big part of our job as health professionals is to reassure
Yeah.
and say, look, it's really okay. Go and see your GP if you're if you're worried. But there is a huge range.
Yeah.
So one of the things, sort of long-term stressors that really builds up through menopause is your basic misogyny. So it's really this lifetime's worth of feeling that we're not good enough and that we have to prove ourselves,
Yeah.
and that we overcare and do lots of emotional labor. And almost to the point where we don't really even notice it anymore because it becomes normal to us. But this sort of underground feeling of always pushing and always feeling slightly wanting and always comparing, there's a lot of comparing, or that we haven't given our kids enough, or that we should have done something, or we should be more, I don't know, our asses should be bigger, or I don't know, whatever the thing is that you know, or, well, bellies, talk about bellies. I mean, that's a whole other, 3-hour chat about the weirdness that we have around bellies. I mean, anyway, we're not going to go that today, but we're constantly found wanting, and this creates so much stress in our system because it basically means that long term, over decades, we're working too hard and we don't rest because we feel guilty.
Yeah, absolutely. The rest is so important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And in Chinese medicine terms, they talk about the shen, and you're given a certain amount of energy at birth, and then you spend it, and when it's gone, you die.
Yeah.
And I get my pointy finger out with clients sometimes about, well, if you pushed yourself through your 20s and you really worked hard through your 30s, and you're pushing yourself through your 40s, and you don't intend to rest, you don't have time to rest now, then what quality of life do you think you're going to have in your 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s? It's not woo woo stuff. It's not. So yeah, we become more susceptible to these negative beliefs because we have to have the right face and the right arse and the right belly, and to work really hard and prove ourselves. And menopause asks us to rest. It's asking us to slow down and reflect and have a much more inward reflective process where our needs become clear.
Yeah.
And that's why people suddenly launch into explosive rage and a lot of difficult feelings, because there's this huge disconnect between their inner needs for space, for kindness, for recognition, for respect. All this stuff comes up really strongly. Yeah. So one of the things that I suggest is that we take a good discerning look at what sort of media we choose to absorb.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean that's been massively highlighted to me since what's been going on with COVID. I just completely switched away from the news, any newspapers. I don't look at any of that stuff anymore, and very rarely on social media, other than kind of to talk to my people that are on there, my groups of people that are on there. Just because I needed to do that for myself.
Yeah.
It was just making me feel very ill. And I actually had a client the other day who walked in and said, oh, do you think there's going to be a third world war? And I just went, whoa, stop. I know what's going on in the world. I'm not that stupid, but I don't want to have a conversation with you about a war. I'm in a really happy place. I've been in my kitchen cooking. I've been having a nice time. And I don't want to talk about war. Thanks very much. My dog's just come up to say hello.
Aww. Oh, you have a Staffy. Is that a Staffy then?
No, he's an English Bull Terrier.
Oh, what a sweetheart. Hello. So
Look,
cute.
I'm saying hello to you.
Beautiful ears. Well,
Oh.
thank you for that, because that exactly
Yeah,
frames what I mean.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
you saw, you noticed what the effect that the information was having on you,
Yeah, absolutely.
and
Yeah,
you made a really clear boundary about what you wanted to hear and what you didn't.
I just couldn't do it, really. And I don't even now. I try not to. My son tries to talk to me about things that are going on in the world and have a rant at me about it because he's a young person and he
Yeah.
believes everything he sees
Mm.
everywhere. And I just like, no, I'm having a good day today. I don't need to. I don't need to listen to any of that. Thanks very much. You know, it's yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I think that also includes, as you're suggesting, it includes friends, the toxicity in friendships, because we do have people who are who deplete us. You know, when we all know how it is when you go out with somebody and you come back and go, oh God.
I need to lie down.
Yeah, and you know, the people who enliven us and affirm ourselves, and you know, that needs looking at too. What else can I say? Also looking at what, so we need to rest. We're sensitive, we need to withdraw, we need more space, and we need to rest. So rest does not necessarily mean lying down and meditating for many people. You know, quite often the jump between the noise and the quiet, between the noisy world and the quiet of resting or meditating, exacerbates anxiety.
Yeah,
You know, their nervous systems become very alert and activated. So maybe you could put in the chat, you can shout out, or maybe put in the chat if you fancy what you find restful. So I would define rest as something where your mind can coast, where you can feel easy, you know, where there's not much you get into a kind of a zone. So I garden, and that is really good for me. Hours and hours and hours can pass.
I've started it off with mine.
Walking my dog.
Yeah, I mean that is just my dog's come into my life at such an amazing time because you know I have to walk him, and that's not a pressure because I like walking. It's not like it's a chore, but it doesn't matter what weather it is. And I use today as an example because it was horrendous out there today, and I got absolutely soaked to my underpants. But I still had to take him out for a walk, and even if it was just the once. And actually, even though I was out and I had the right clothes on, and you know, I just got absolutely soaked. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter today, really. You know, I was out and thinking, well, this would be so much nicer if it was sunny, but it was still lovely to be out and notice birds and just be
Yeah.
out in the country, really.
Connecting with nature is, you know, is a
Yeah,
constant. Another dog walker,
yeah.
where I can just be me in all the activities you're both talking of.
Yeah,
Hypopressives.
yeah, absolutely.
Popular choice, I would imagine.
Mindful practice, actually,
Yeah.
hyperpressives. And actually doing hyperpressives, I remember like in the summer doing hyperpressives out in my garden, and I've got an amazing silver birch tree, and just you know lying down, and it's always got loads of birds in it, the birch tree. It's really look, the birds love it any time of year. And so there was loads of activity going on and the sounds, and it just amazing, really amazing. So yeah, I agree with doing hyperpressives, definitely.
Yeah.
It's a really good practice.
And hyperpressives, I would extend that into movement that suits you in the given moment. So
Yeah,
one
absolutely.
day you might want to walk really fast or do lots of, I don't know, planky type things, or someday you might want to be very slow and mindful and really give yourself permission to for that to change, for your needs to change, and for
Yeah.
that to be okay.
Yeah, that can be really hard though, can't it? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
like an avid kind of gym bunny in my past years, and I've actually quite enjoyed not being quite so avid. It's been quite not nice to not really be that bothered, or not as bothered as I used to be by it all.
Yeah. Okay, so this is, thank you for that. It's your points are so great because you, every time you say something, you exactly exemplify
Yeah.
the point I want to make, which is there's another kind of tension that we're very prone to, that is hard to spot, where where our care and our self-care and our exercises, whatever, hypopressives or qigong or whatever, becomes this thing that we have to do.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I have to have this much water or do this, and it becomes this stick, another stick to beat ourselves with, this impossible thing that we have to attain to be good enough, and that creates more tension. So
Yeah.
that's a good one to spot.
I'm
Good
just really,
spot.
I'm just really smiling because we had delayed tickets to Ramesh Ranganathan's like 3 years ago. We booked these tickets, me and my son, and we went on Friday night, and he was talking about hydration, and he was talking about that his brother, where they went somewhere, and a relation was like, had this metal bottle of water, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm staying hydrated." And he's like, "Yeah, but why? You're at a children's play park." And he's like, "Yeah, but I need to, don't you know, you need to stay hydrated." And it was just, sorry, I'm not going to do it justice, but when you talked about hydration, it just really made me smile because
Mm.
yeah, it was just him kind of going, what is this obsession with just keeping hydrated all the time? But you're right, we put that pressure on ourselves, don't we? We have all these little checklists. So I must make sure I get my 5 a day, and I must make sure I do X, and I must do that amount in the gym, and I must hydrate myself. It's it can be very,
And it creates more tightness and more holding, and
yeah,
it cuts us essentially. I mean, we can talk about diaphragms here. It cuts us off from our feelings because we stop breathing,
yeah,
and it cuts us off from our feelings. And what people in menopause really need to do is to feel where they are and to feel themselves.
yeah.
Oh, look at the time. Okay, I'm going to speed up because we're having too much fun here. So the next thing on my list is ageism. So a lot of the fear and toxicity is because age is not celebrated in our culture, and it's not just my feminist woo-woo. The president, David Sturdy, who was the president of the International Menopause Society, said, highlighted some research where in matriarchal cultures, women suffer less symptoms.
Right.
So again, looking at our beliefs about aging is really telling. When you look at your face in the mirror, track kindly the sort of messages that you see when you look at whatever you see,
Yeah.
or when you see people with grey hair, or when you see people who are older than you or younger than you, and my all-time favorite classic, "Oh, you look great for your age." It's like, oh,
Stab in the back.
well, yeah, and someone did that to me the other day, and I was like, "Have you met me? Have you listened to anything I've been saying for the last 10 years? Oh my God." But crucially, part of me was still pleased because we're all swimming in that patriarchal culture, So I was still stroked and kind of pleased about it, and I was like, ugh.
What am I doing? Pushed and pulled in all directions.
Well, so that I'm, yeah, it really caught me, but I was fascinated by the conflict. So just to say, we're all caught in this patriarchal soup, but examining and opening up to, what are my beliefs about this? What are my fears about aging? What are my beliefs about aging is really helpful, because then at least we know what we're dealing with. And looking at great role models. Looking at great postmenopausal role models. So mine are Angela Farmer, who is an yogini a yoga teacher in her 80s who's astonishing,
wow.
astonishing woman. And Penny Simkin, I don't know if you've come across her. She's a doula educator who works with survivors of abuse.
Okay.
And they're both people who wear their authority and their humility really lightly. So they come along with their vulnerability, which I love.
Yeah.
Lots of artists, Georgia O'Keeffe, Louise Bourgeois, but having a sort of gallery of amazing older women,
Yeah.
is really helpful, because that just completely turns it around.
Yeah, you're
From
right.
the
I mean, in
from
terms
that.
of kind of I come across it all the time where women think they're, they've lived with certain symptoms for so long that there's not really anything they can do about it because they're old now. Yeah, I know, it's quite frustrating, and it's and I think that again, it's that whole not listening into the media and not kind of looking at the messages they give you, but you're kind of told it all the way through your journey as a woman. You've had a baby, what do you expect? You're perimenopausal, what do you expect? You're postmenopausal, what do you expect? You're getting old, what do you expect? It's all that kind of the messages we're fed, isn't it? And it kind of changes the way people think about themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes us ill.
Yeah.
Because of course we feel trapped and depressed.
Yeah.
And with that sort of message. And all the kind of, if you think posturally what that does over a lifetime, you can see the kind of widow's hump forming,
Yeah.
and the squish and the. So on the upside, just getting people to stand in a more aligned way and to breathe, just by helping people to breathe, you are doing amazing work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they will be more alive. And they will be taking in more vitality and feeling better, and it changes their hormonal picture.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with Amy Cuddy and her, you have more testosterone circulating when you stand like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just by demonstrating hypopressives.
I do that all day, so I should be really pumped.
Yes, we're all sitting up straight and breathing properly now.
Usually we're kind of slumping down and someone says the word posture and everyone's kind of...
Whoop! Yes, absolutely. I remind my husband that men age from time to time. Yes, strange. Strange, how strange that men age, yeah. And they have their own story too about providing and virility, and patriarchy stuffs us all.
Yeah, it does.
For sure. So what else? I want to leave time for your questions. So food. So no surprises there. Long term of eating sugar and refined carbs and lots of caffeine and booze messes up your hormones. Oh, that's a surprise. But lots of people don't know that. And lots of people are not aware that making small changes can make a massive difference. So, and also that it's not, we have a problem and we like to reach for an exotic solution, go and buy a handful of supplements or find some fancy doctor, or immediately reach for an expert. But actually it's much more available and appropriate for us to eat more like our grandmothers. So eating more whole foods and pulses and sprouted seeds and mustard and cress. My granddad grew mustard and cress on his pants.
Oh, pants.
On his old pants and his old vest.
That was something we did at school, wasn't it? Like,
yeah,
grow it, take it. That was your little experiment at school, and you took.
But the sprouts you buy in supermarkets, they're rapeseed. They're not cress.
Oh, okay.
So they don't have the phytoestrogens that we need.
Oh, amazing.
I know, astonishing. So yeah, lots of green vegetables and sprouted seeds and all that kind of thing. So that is another aspect of toxicity that is in our system, and you know, always easier to add in a small bit of something healthy than to like, right now I'm going to completely change everything.
Figure everything out, yeah. And eat spinach.
And eat spinach. Yep, definitely eat spinach. Like Popeye. Spinach and avocados. And the other thing that I'd like to draw your attention to is our chemical environment. So things like cleaning products, hormone disruptors in our homes. So cleaning products, parabens in cosmetics, plastics. So I think plastic water bottles have gone out of style now. Mostly you don't see people using those, but there's still quite a lot of sort of scratchy old takeaway boxes that are a bit abused, and you know, chucking all that stuff out or recycling it or getting rid of it is really helpful. Pesticides on foods are also hormone disruptors, and you can there's a great resource at the UK breast. Did I write it down? Yes, the breast cancer UK website. There's a list there of hormone disruptors.
Okay.
So obviously that's for people with for women with cancer, but the same thing applies. And also fire retardant sprays on furniture, and there's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And it's a useful thing to know, because if you are suffering, or if you have a client who is suffering, then you know, stopping using Mr. Muscle is quite an easy win.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that we've been massively affected by all the disinfecting and anti-bac and all the rest of it that's been going on in the last few years as well? Or do you think there will be
that's not my area of expertise.
No,
but I would suggest shoving a load more chemicals into our systems is not going to be helpful.
No.
Do you have information or opinions about that?
No, I just think I'm myself like very much on the same page as you, but just the madness that's now gone on with cleansing everything and chemicals everywhere and wiping everything down. Just like I say, it's not going to be, I don't really think that's going to be particularly good for people's health either.
No, I think that people project, it's a projection of people's fears.
Really. Yeah.
The anxiety is in the surface, and the spray will sort it, but
yeah, absolutely,
that's not going to help our mental health or make us feel soothed.
No.
So the other thing that I really wanted to give you is the thought that people in menopause don't need fixing, that it is not an illness, it's not a condition that needs radical change, and as that's the popular narrative.
Yeah,
it's a problem that needs to be sorted out.
Yeah.
It's much more to do with these different areas of toxicity that make us that are toxic for us in terms of the chemicals or the belief systems that create tightness and create tension and stress in our bodies. And further to that, mostly people know how to soothe themselves. So we already know what makes us feel good. So we've talked about it already a bit in terms of what rests are. Somebody says that it was disruptive to our microbiome. So that's the disinfectant.
Yeah.
Yes, that must be yeah. I would think that would be true. So we already know how to look after ourselves, to do the qigong or the hypopressives or walk the dog, and that we will all have our own version of this, and that rather than before we go to what, before we go to pay the professional, it makes far more sense to do the stuff that soothes us.
Yeah.
Because a soothed nervous system, whether you're using sort of touch or stroking or holding yourself or movement or breath work or walking the dog or whatever it is a brilliant place to start and will make more difference.
Yeah, agreed.
You will be in charge and in authority of your system. And it's, when we panic, it's hard to remember to do those things.
Oh yeah, I mean, like you say, sometimes it's just people think that if they pay someone, they won't really have to put the effort in, or it's not even the effort, it's the, it's almost kind of like they know what they should be doing, but like it's a difficult conversation, isn't it, to make that change?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it's an ongoing conversation, and taking, unfortunately, often for women in their 40s, GPs don't necessarily realize that it's perimenopause.
No.
And there's still about 20, I don't know, I'm not very good at remembering statistics, but there's a huge number that are prescribed antidepressants instead.
Yeah.
And an HRT doesn't necessarily fix everything. It can make a dramatic improvement, and it can take some time to find the right version and the right dosage and stuff. But what I observe is that people still have to do their personal work to learn to soothe themselves and let go of stuff.
Yeah.
So do you have questions?
So has anybody got a question for Kate now?
You're welcome to stick them in the chat, and I will engage with the question without mentioning you, or you can speak if you prefer to do that. That's really fun.
Does anybody want to give me a wave?
So while you're having a think about that, I'll give you a lowdown on the psychological sort of map that I use, which is a seasonal one. So we think about the time from your first period through your teens as being spring, so concerned with discovering the world and discovering who you are. Your late 20s and 30s being about summer, so wanting to see your spirit manifested in the world, so whether that's babies or career or activism or artistic projects, what have you. And then the spring and summer are applauded by our culture. Autumn, not so much. So autumn would be perimenopause, and that would be, again, it's where I started, much more reflective, inward turning, and sensitive. So because of this sensitivity, we feel so much more. We feel ourselves so much more. We feel our needs so much more, and it's very raw.
Yeah.
And this will move into a winter of menopause, which is where we are able, hopefully, to feel much more at home with ourselves, to accept more of our lumpy bits, accept more shadow, accept more of our human contradictions and the things the challenges that we have faced and face in our lives. And post-menopause, we get a whole new cycle. So a second spring, which is why my book is called Second Spring, and a second summer, and a second autumn, and a second winter. And this becomes a new cycle of emergence and finding out who we are and seeing our spirit manifested in the world, and then letting go before we shuffle off. So it's a very different view from the mainstream one.
So Michelle, you've got your hand up. You've got a question for us? Yeah. So if you unmute for me.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I resonate with so much that you're both saying. I was very, very lucky back end of perimenopause, going into menopause, to meet with some wonderful people, nutritionists. I'd studied nutrition before, very spiritual people. So when we're talking about going on this spiritual journey and becoming sensitive with ourselves, I was carried through all of that. So I think that came alongside, and I felt like I sailed through that menopause year and the year or so after with, I think for so many women my age, I mean, I'm 54 now, so I'm 4 years sort of post last bleed. We're often so busy with family, with elderly parents. I've got adult children, I've got grandchildren, and there's just always so much going on. It's overwhelming to fit in your self-care. So I think where I'm looking, and I've got physical issues because of that, and the brain fog, trying to manage my own business and everything. So I think just started to answer some of that, where you're saying you have a second spring and a second summer. In terms of, I think an Ayurvedic doctor friend said to me, actually, menopause, she said it's 10 years. When I said to her, I'm through that, she just burst out laughing. She said, no, that's like about 10 years in Ayurvedic terms. Is there something within us? Do we just accept and work on the self-care in terms of, is it the hormones balancing and we get used to them maybe at a different lower level? Or is it just that we now become more self-care and more boundaried in ourselves? What to say, well, does my mind come back to where it was? Do I need to physically, does my body, with your muscle mass, yes, we can go to the gym and we can, or my bone density, I can work on that. Is there something that actually shifts and changes within us, or is it linked with our mindset and it gradually evolves and we just get used to a new us?
Oh, what a question.
Yeah, great question.
Thank you, Michelle. Oh, wow. I mean, there's so much in there. There's so much in there. And firstly, well done to find a great crew.
Yeah.
That was remarkably skillful.
Yes.
I think my answer to your question is yes. It's all of that. It's all of that. It's all of mindset. It's all of when I'm talking about self-care, this is in busy lives. This is maybe spending an extra minute sitting on the loo with the door locked, hiding away from the people who are biting your ankles or chewing your ass or whatever they're doing, Even consciously chosen, gleefully chosen minutes of time where you can connect with yourself in whatever way has a massive effect, because our body starts to believe that we can take care, that we're trusting what we're hearing from them. And clearly we're living in aging bodies, and aging has an effect. There's kind of like the flip side of this, oh, you're an old crone, an old witch, and then you die and you're no use, is this kind of superwoman, super crone, ever young kind of like the Tampax girl used to be, I'm playing tennis. Which is, which isn't particularly helpful either. So we can choose to come to terms with living in an aging body where we are slower, where we have less muscle mass, and we could choose to live differently and to use our discernment to choose where we put our energy wisely.
Yeah.
That's not really an answer, but I think that when we're complicated systems of spirit and energy and physics and biology and belief all at once, you know that. I mean, I'm just telling you what you know already, but to say, and behind your question, I hear, a real longing for something other as well. But you don't have
Yes.
to You don't have
Yeah.
to go, you don't have, this will be on social media, so please don't name what that is. But I want to say that that is a legitimate longing, and really kind of validate that longing for whatever it is that you have there. It's really important.
Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Michelle. Right, no one else has got their hand up. No one has got any more questions? What I should do is just pick someone at random, but that's really nasty, isn't it?
No.
But yeah, so I mean, it's been really lovely talking to you. I don't know whether you had anything else that you would like to share towards the end here now as we're finishing off, but
Are you talking to me?
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I see.
Everyone else has kind of dried up and
yeah, well, it's kind of getting towards pajama time.
Yeah, no.
The name of the book, I shall wave it around a bit. I've got one here. It's called Second Spring, The Self-Care Guide to Menopause. There it is.
I've been doing what you said, which is just literally dipping in and reading bits. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it looks chunky, and there is a lot of material in there, but it's all arranged in little teeny tiny chapters suitable for people who are in a hurry.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I found it really interesting so far. I must confess that I haven't read an awful lot of it, but I started with it, and I was looking at actually very interested in kind of the nutrition side of it as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
finding some little gems in there for
and hopefully it will make things easier, because there's a whole the other aspect to all of this is that what with Davina's program and stuff, there's a growing menopause industry.
Yeah,
there are now a lot of people out there to make a lot of money out of people who are suffering, women who are suffering in midlife, and exploit the challenges to sell shampoo and everything under the sun is coming at you, and the 3-step program for perfect well-being and to get your libido back, and
no, it's not always that helpful, really, is it?
No, but it kind of comes with, we live in a a capitalist society, and it comes along with awareness.
Absolutely. Right, well, if no one else has got any more questions, it's been an absolute pleasure. We feel stretched, and so yeah, you're right, Joe, we do. Joe says thank you. I think we feel stretched in so many directions. And that's very true.
And the question that comes to me is, and how can we come back to ourselves, and come back to myself? And that's that's something that I ask or make aware in myself like 50 times a day, because yes, our attention is always out there. And how can we come back again and again?
Brilliant. Well, that's a great way to kind of wrap this up, isn't it? Well, thank you very much. I'll leave you to go get into your pajamas, and everyone else as well. I'm sure you're all nice and tired now, and ready to rest up and look after yourselves. So yes, thank you very much for taking your time to come and talk to us this evening. And how can people have a look at your book?
It's in all good bookshops, Amazon and Waterstones and indie bookshops, and all over the place. And you can find me over on Kate_Codrington. And I run lots of events and all kinds of stuff. And if if informally you want to pop over to Instagram and ask me a question, that's fine too.
Amazing. All right, that's great. Well, thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. And take care.
Thank you so much.
For your evening.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.